Last year during the NBA playoffs, there was a lot of talk about how great the NBA playoffs are and how the NBA playoffs are better than March Madness. Admittedly, it was a great year for the NBA playoffs last year, but how could anyone claim that the NBA playoffs is greater than March Madness? March Madness is the greatest sporting event we have in America. What can people remember about last year's NBA playoffs right now? I mean, yeah, some of you that are pretty serious fans might remember the Clippers Spurs series, and others obviously could remember the finals with the Warriors and the Cavs. But that's really about it. I mean, quick, who did Cleveland play in all three rounds of the playoffs last year? Who did the Warriors beat in order to advance to the finals last year? Most people probably wouldn't even remember those things right now, and yet it was supposedly a great year for the NBA playoffs. March Madness is amazing every year. Every game is a game 7 with the loser going home. And admittedly, the level of play is certainly no match for the NBA, but the level of intensity is just as high, and the level of emotion after the games are over is way above and beyond. When an NBA player's season is over, most of them just start getting ready for next year. But for most of the seniors in the NCAA tournament, their last loss is the final game of organized basketball for their life. So you can imagine how awesome it is for the winners and how devastating it is for the people who lose. And this weekend was an incredible roller coaster ride from the very first game of Saturday morning with Wichita State versus Miami through Indiana's signature win over Kentucky, Gonzaga's surprise blowout over Utah, all the number one seeds moving on, and then, of course, three of the most exciting and memorable games that we will ever see. Stephen F. Austin failing to hold on to Notre Dame, the huge Cinderella story that could have come out of that. Wisconsin's flurry to come back and beat Xavier, which gave me great pain, by the way, because I had the Musketeers advancing to the Final Four. And then, of course, seeing a team come from 12 down with 40 seconds left in the Texas A&M Northern Iowa game. Wow. I mean, that was amazing to see that happen. I thought the worst thing I'd seen this year was LSU's epically bad failure to show up in the SEC tournament, Jacob Kinnemore. But Northern Iowa's collapse in that last 40 seconds was just hard to watch. But what incredible outcomes we had in those games. I want to congratulate Daniel Reeder and Robert Gonzalez for being the second round leaders right now. Robert had it wrapped up with Stephen F. Austin's victory over Notre Dame, but then, they choked. And then Robert had it wrapped up again as Xavier was downing Wisconsin. But Wisconsin had Bronson Koenig had something to say about that with an epic 3-point buzzer beater from the corner. So Daniel and Robert are tied right now. We'll break the tie with round 3's games on Thursday and Friday. Connor Morita and Brian Winans are right behind them with 48 points. Robert and Daniel have 50, by the way. In a solo spot for 5th place, we have Chris Oakes with a surprising showing by a generally mediocre sports prognosticator. Rounding out our Elite 8, there's a many-way tie with people like Kyle Lopes and Jeff Bry, Ryan Casey and Buddy Boyd, J. Brad Britton, Evan Price, Jason Flynn, also former champions Kathleen Woods and Bruce Goodman, and last year's champion Jim McGowan with another fine showing this year. Those are the people currently contending at the top of the pool standings. Jen Gianosa and Jennifer Donald also lurk 1 point behind Kathleen, vying for the top chick honors, which is always a great honor, great achievement year after year in our pool, because it shows that you are cool and know something about sports, sort of. Now, there are people who are on the last page of the pool standings. The last page is filled with those who could not even muster up 40 points in this year's pool. They didn't show up, much like SMU, who is not participating in the tournament. These people have not shown up. They are trailing our leaders and quickly falling out of contention. We have people like former champion Chris Cooper, another former champion Scott Dennis, and also another former champion Jacob Kinnamore. And yes, also on page 3, my not so illustrious self, mired in 92nd place. I'm stinking this year, as I have all too often in this pool. But I am beating 16 people. Yes, here are the dregs of this year's pool. With 37 points, we have Jess Martinetti and John Israel and Brent Bridges and former champion Joe Gianosa with a terrible showing this year. With 36 points, we have Chris Valentino, Josh Taylor, SMU homer, and also last year's caboose, making a bid for 2-time epic fail, Nick Buckaloo. And then with 35 points, we have Adam Lewandowski, once again proving the level of sports knowledge that is very common for any Seattle Seahawks fan. We also, with 35 points, have Al DiLeonardo, who is clearly too busy doing things like raising a family and running a company to be too concerned with piddly matters like basketball. We also have people with 34 points, Mitch Stevens and Mike Weak Sauce. It's not enough suffering to merely be an Ohio sports fan. They must compound it by being terrible sports prognosticators with 34 points. Also, the previously mentioned big ain't Anthony Garcia. But then we descend way down into the bowels of the pool standings, to the bottom, and we find there, with 31 points, Mr. Jake Dougherty. At least Jake could relish in seeing Michigan State and Michigan eliminated in round 1, but his Buckeyes didn't even get into the NCAA tournament. And yes, they have already lost in the second round of the NIT. Thanks for your annual donation, Jake. You're out. But in last, not only last place in round 1 with 18 for 32, but also in last place for round 2 with only 6 out of 16. That's hard to do. Yes, I'm speaking of Brooklyn Espegard. Brooke had South Dakota State in her Sweet 16. Perhaps since that's one of the nearest schools to Minneapolis, Minnesota to qualify, Brooke was going homer with that pick. Brooke also had Stony Brook in her Sweet 16. I wonder why. Brooke's entire Sweet 16 from the Midwest region were all eliminated in round 1. Yes, she had Texas Tech and Purdue and Seton Hall and Michigan State. All were out by the end of the first round of games. Brooke, we love you, but your picks stink. I guess you could blame it on Dane. Now, as far as payments go, we talk a little bit about payments. We have 17 unpaid entries at this time. 10 of those, by the way, I'm positive I will collect. These are not deadbeats, but they are just a little forgetful, or maybe they're a little too busy. I'm talking about people like Buddy Boyd and Scott Dennis, Justin Ipp, Trey Ketchum, Larry Manley, Jeff Nixon, Adrian Ramirez. Gentlemen, please find your cell phone. It's probably within 3 feet of you at this exact second. Take it out, and you can easily pay me very quickly. Square Cash, very easy. Look for me on there. PayPal, Venmo. Send your $40. Of the other 7 entries, by the way, there are 2 that I am deeming bogus right now. The entries of Scott Brooks and Serena K. I do not know these people. I have no connection to them whatsoever, and I don't know what's going on there. We're probably not going to collect those 2. So the other ones I'm still a little unsure about. I could use a little help. Evan Price, if you want to help collect from Travis Lewis and Celestino Rosa. Also, any of you Ohio homers want to help collect from Mitch Stevens? That would be awesome. Projected payouts. It's probably going to look like this: $12.50 for first place, $8.50 for second place, and then $600, $500, $400, $300, $200, and $100. The Elite 8 will get paid. Those are, of course, pending some final collections. Any adjustments I have to make, I'll just make to first and second place. So third through eighth will remain what I just said. Some great games coming up on Thursday and Friday. We got Kansas versus Maryland on Thursday with the number 1 seed and tournament favorite Jayhawks in action. We have Villanova versus Miami in a pivotal game for the few of you who took the Wildcats to make the Final Four. We also have Oregon and Duke in a game that's turned out to look much more competitive than it did previously. Oregon not looking very good in the last round. And then we have Oklahoma and Texas A&M, and who knows what will happen with the Aggies after their miracle victory against Northern Iowa. On Friday, we got North Carolina and Indiana, a battle of the blue bloods of college basketball. We have Notre Dame and Wisconsin, a total toss-up game. We have Virginia versus Iowa State in a pivotal game for all of you who took Michigan State. You are rooting for the Cyclones to advance very far in this tournament. And then we also have Gonzaga and Syracuse, the Orange, going up against the Zags. Gonzaga, probably the first 10 seed to ever be favored in all of their first 3 games in the tournament. Should be another great weekend. I'll be back at you guys on Friday night with an update video. Enjoy the games.